you'd think it's an entirely different business that I'm running now than I was running then. Sales wise, we did $150,000 in 2017 and then just shy of $1 million in 2018. In 2019, we did 1.2 million, and that is the year that Shark Tank airs. We were very light on e-commerce in 19. It was like we had a site, but it wasn't really a big focus, maybe doing 30 orders a month or so. And when Shark Tank aired, since I didn't talk about e-commerce so much on the show, so we actually got maybe like 400 orders a week for the first couple weeks after it aired, but it wasn't like a massive thing. Shark Tank these days is very much like, there's no more everyone sits around the TV and watches primetime. Like people just watch shows on their Hulu, when they want to catch up on stuff. Yeah. So it sort of like trickled through, and certainly like, a nice boosted sessions. I think we had like 50,000 people come to our site when it aired. So I was 6 years old when my parents got divorced, and this was in the Sacramento area still. And they both stayed close by, so nice to like have the divorced parents, but within a city of each other, just kind of neighboring suburbs. Yeah. I had some turbulence with relationship with my mom and some challenges I went through there that I think ended up kind of weighing on my mental health as I grew up. This divorce just leads to some inconsistency naturally, where you're going to have a different experience at one home than you will at another. And for children in formative years, like that's really challenging to not have one situation. So yeah, I ended up like having some issues with anxiety and perfectionism, kind of like wanting to be perfect all the time and make them proud of me, and kind of this like, I think when you have divorced parents, often kids just want to get the attention. And so for me, like accomplishments became that way I could get attention. I went to my first party when I was 14. Off the bat, like, got invited, was like, let's do it. Lied to my parents that I was staying the night at a friend's house, and it was actually like the party was down the street. The first time I drank till I blacked out, and I had all of this, like I mentioned, stress and pressure on like that I put on myself to do so good at school. And I don't know, just all how intense my mind was all the time. And alcohol was like, whoa, I didn't have to think. Like it was like I could just relax and I could just blend in and pretend to be one of the carefree, cool kids, But that final straw, I was on a business trip in Barcelona for Intel, and, drink after drink started. And I remember very little until coming to at 3:30 in the morning, and I was in a stranger's apartment. I had cheated on my then boyfriend, lost my belongings, like where's my purse, where's my phone, the whole thing. And have no idea where I am in Barcelona.
All right, welcome everyone to another episode of the Jake Dunlap Show. We are very excited that you joined us. If you haven't tuned in, this is the show where we talk to celebrities, thought, and industry leaders to really discover their journey to success. I am super excited that you're joining us. This show is like no other. I can promise you that. You might laugh, you might cry, but you will definitely leave inspired and gain a whole new level of insight into those people that you follow, love, and admire. All right, welcome everyone to another episode of the Jake Dunlap Show. Very excited for this week's guest. Talk about entrepreneurship, right? Going through the corporate route, battling different areas within their personal life and professional life to really embracing entrepreneurship and making it happen. This week's guest is not just taking the cookie dough industry by storm and serving thousands of households every week, but in doing so, she's helping to reduce the social stigmas associated with addiction recovery and mental health. She has held multiple roles over a 10-year run at Intel prior to starting Dope, has appeared on ABC Shark Tank, and I can't forget to mention her being named on the Forbes 30 Under 30 list. Please join me in welcoming the queen of cookie dough and this is crazy, the most sophisticated store owner that Barbara Corcoran has ever met in her life, Kelsey Moreira. Kelsey, thank you for joining the show.
Thank you. What a nice intro. Thanks for having me.
There we go. Well, I'm excited for the conversation and just getting caught up prior as well too. So as everybody knows, we tell the story and the journey of people and individuals who have accomplished great things in their life, and we find that we learn the most from those stories, the stories that shape people as we grow up and as we experience different things in life. It's not just the success that we all see on the aftermath, although that would be a lot easier. Right, Kelsey, if it's just like...
Just snap your fingers. It just happens.
That's right. Mailbox money, right? So when people talk about mailbox money, I'm like, I don't know where that exists, right? Like, I'd love to figure it out, right? Like what this mailbox money and ClickFunnels thing is all about. So let's go back to the start. So I know you were born in Dallas, but grew up in Sacramento. And for everyone out there, this is like mid 90s. And I've got to imagine like this time in particular is like a big kind of transition time for Sacramento, right? For like tech is kind of moving in and you're getting ready for the .com piece as well too. So what was it like for you growing up in Sacramento?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, they've come so far too. I feel like even since I left Sacramento, there's just been so much infusion of business and all the people leaving the Bay Area and headed out. So it's come a long way. I'd say it's a whole new Sacramento, even from when I was there. And I was in El Dorado Hills, so like suburb outside of it. Very good life, like simple, easy life. That was a great place to grow up. As far as like you want for nothing, I was very privileged and fortunate to grow up in a community and with a family that was able to provide what I needed. I didn't have to worry about, basic life needs, and beautiful place. So yeah, and had two.
Did you float the American River ever?
Yes. Yes.
Did you?
Yeah. They take the tubes out there. It's a fun place. It's, I love the proximity. Like Sacramento was 2 hours from Tahoe, 2 hours from San Francisco. Right. So it was a really like great place to raise a family. We had a good time growing up there and having all this close by. I was 6 years old when my parents got divorced, and this was in the Sacramento area still. And they both stayed close by. So nice to like have the divorced parents, but within a city of each other, just kind of neighboring suburbs. Yeah. Did the 2 weeks at someone's house, 2 weeks at the other house. So I had a pretty, all things considered, like okay divorce situation, having them still be like able to speak and handle things between the two of us. But I had some turbulence with relationship with my mom and some challenges I went through there that I think ended up kind of weighing on my mental health as I grew up. This divorce just leads to some inconsistency naturally, where you're going to have a different experience at one home than you will at another. And for children in formative years, like that's really challenging to not have one situation. So I ended up like having some issues with anxiety and perfectionism, kind of like wanting to be perfect all the time and make them proud of me, and kind of this like, I think when you have divorced parents, often kids just want to get the attention. And so for me, like accomplishments became that way I could get attention,
Yeah, for sure. My parents were divorced when I was 5, and eventually they ended up moving. I grew up in Kansas City, and they were 45 minutes apart, and I can definitely resonate with that experience. Again, it's such a dual experience, and you're trying to shift gears, and it's like, wait, I'm getting yelled at here, like, and I don't get yelled at for this here.
Right. Like this is okay there. And then, or it was okay one week and now it's not the next. Yeah.
Exactly. And so what line of work were your parents in?
So my dad's been in the construction industry through my whole life, and went through, the 08, 09 situation with the crash and everything, and was laid off after 13 years with Lennar. He's still in construction today, more commercial work than residential. And then my mom was in banking for most of the time when I was growing up. So manager of a bank branch and whatnot. And then, she's always been just a big go-getter. Now she's a loan officer. So went into the mortgage industry when I was in high school, I think, kind of made that transition. So more on the finance side of things, but both very after it,
Yeah, let's talk about that. Yeah, I mean, and what are some memories that you have there? I mean, you talked about maybe struggling with some of the issues with your mom and perfectionism, and again, that, I don't know, like, I think you actually summarized it pretty well about just like different rules at different places. Like, what are some memories you have about kind of pre-high school years, or kind of maybe even lessons learned in business, or lesson learned from your family around, operating as an adult, or operating in, the future?
Just general work ethic stuff too. I think from a young age, like both of my parents were definitely in the same line of speech, when it was like, you need to get good grades, you need to go to a good college, and you're going to get a good job. We had no real discussions about entrepreneurship growing up, but it was really like, grades are incredibly important. Doing well in school and doing well at anything you put yourself into is incredibly important. And I never really got, I don't think I was afraid of being chastised if I did bad, but this like intensity on how important it was to do good, I think I just kind of took it to the next level, where then I was my own worst critic, where it was like, I got a B on a test and I'd be in hysterics, So sometimes it'd be like, Kelsey, like, be a little easier. It's okay. Like, be a little easier on yourself, instead of it so much coming from them. But I think that idea of like, you're definitely, you're going to get good grades. You're going to go to a good college. I just remember it was like beaten into my head as a kid that was going to be the path, and I'd get a good job and stay there till I could retire. So, that seemed like it was going to be the steady path. I think both of my parents, really instilled in me just a great work ethic and like pride in what I was presenting to the world, whatever it was.
Yeah. And so what was high school Kelsey like? Like, what were the things, like, were you, obviously talked about grades and, the pressure there, were you, into clubs, sports, what were you doing in those formative years?
Yeah. I tried my hand at sports. Like, I guess all kids, right? I did like soccer when I was little, but I was more like,
every kid plays soccer.
I was like, when are the snacks? Like, I'm just here for the snacks. My dad jokes that I would just come to the sidelines and be like, can we get the Capri Suns yet? Like, when is snack time?
Exactly.
So I couldn't really hang with that. I ended up just really veering away from like team sports. Oddly, I preferred stuff that was like very individual. So ended up getting into track and field and gymnastics, and started gymnastics when I was maybe like 8 or so, did it till I was 13, 14. When it was going to get into the competitive, like, you got to go every day. And I knew I needed to have more time for school and whatnot at that age than competitive gymnastics. But yeah, I had this funny thing where I had a hard time trying new things. It's funny for an entrepreneur, because like, you really got to be okay just going for it. But as a kid, I just leaned away from the discomfort of not being good at something. I didn't want to do something I wasn't good at. And sometimes, like, if you're a part of a team, it's like, I guess I didn't want to let anybody else down. I didn't want to be a part of a team if I wasn't going to be able to perform and others were counting on me to do good enough. So it's funny that I leaned into, gymnastics and track. And then when I was 14, this is kind of where like the story, I started to get a bit confused on like who I was going to be and how I would fit in. Cause getting straight A's in school and like the occasional B on a test, but doing really great in school. I was sort of that, like, I'm kind of friends with everybody person, like a lot of acquaintances and very few best friends, like could easily adapt and move around to all the different cliques and groups at the school for the most part. And then I went to my first party when I was 14, like off the bat, like, got invited, was like, let's do it. Lied to my parents that I was staying the night at a friend's house, and it was actually like the party was down the street. It's just hilarious thinking back about some of these things that I thought I could get away with. But yeah, the first time I drank till I blacked out, and I had all of this, like I mentioned, stress and pressure on like that I put on myself to do so good at school. And I don't know, just all how intense my mind was all the time. And alcohol was like, whoa, I didn't have to think. Like, it was like I could just relax and I could just blend in and pretend to be one of the carefree cool kids, and I really leaned into that over the years and sort of let it accelerate when I got this shift into corporate America, at just 16. Yeah.
Let's talk about that. So again, obviously you started kind of working, relatively early, right? You kind of got your degree, it wasn't like the typical path, necessarily for some. So what was that transformation like, where, like you said, you talked about, you're starting to get into, you're kind of finding out who you are, and then you go kind of into the working world.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of people, again, you said, you talked about feeling that pressure to go to college, et cetera, but, obviously you're going to work at Intel too. So it's not like, it's like a slouch, you're not like waiting tables, which is what I did at TGI Fridays for 2 years in college. But you're going into it. So what was that like? Like, how did that come about, and what made you go down that path before, going into ASU?
Yeah, so I was 16, and it was the summer before my sophomore year, and one of my neighbors that worked for Intel came over and knocked on the door. My dad answers, and she's like, "Do you think Kelsey would want an internship at Intel?" And he remembers it like it was yesterday, because he said, "Yes, she would." And he yelled up the stairs like, "Kelsey, get down here. You're going to work for Intel," and called me down the stairs, and sure enough, got an opportunity to become an intern. And that was originally just going to be a summer internship, but if I've shared anything about how like intense I was about performing and like being all on it and just like kind of over the top, like really passionate about like anything I did, I just did a great job that first summer, and they asked, if I would stay on through the school year part-time. And so it was this big shift in my life from already kind of having this intensity in one area, having a hard time maybe finding how I would fit in, and then going to, okay, now I leave school at like 11 in the morning and go to work at Intel with people that were 20, 30 years my senior, and work till 5. And I have some like really distinct memories of coming home and arriving home at the same time as my parents. Say I'm at my dad's house, my dad and my stepmom get back, and we're all three tired from the work day, like kicking our legs up on the recliner. Like, and I was thinking like how weird this is that I've sort of like morphed from, it was just school stress to like, now I have this other world to dive into. The benefits of it are, immense as well. Like I learned an incredible amount in all of those years at such a young age to get to, in the early times, really shadow some amazing people who, making amazing strategic business decisions. How do they think through things? How do they prioritize stuff? What's going to be the considerations before we make a big choice or big purchase, or, all these things were just neat to soak up at a young age. And then stepping into more like management roles when I was even 18, I was running like the APAC and through Asia and stuff, kind of these global calls for our corporation. We were running on the business side. I was doing like enterprise processors. So moved into gateways for a bit. I got to soak up like so much. The tech side was very cool, but just functional business stuff was just amazing to get exposed to through those years. And aligning it with what I ended up doing at Intel, at ASU, I studied international digital marketing and international business, something like that. So I was taking a course for like community management, and I was the community manager for the Intel vPro Expert Center. Oh, so I'm like, an essay prompt is like, imagine a scenario where, and I was like, well, yesterday, we had someone.
Right. So
it was really neat to have that application of what I was doing at work and learning in school. But yeah, this is kind of like, my life was like dual paths, the drinking, partying Kelsey, and then the Kelsey you would see in the professional life and in school. I still don't know how I did what I did through all those years. And at ASU, the drinking really went to the next level.
Yeah, ASU's up there. ASU's up there from a party standpoint.
It's like we had every night of the week pretty much. I think like Mondays would be the only ones that we'd take off sometimes to recover. And every other night was, there's always something to do right when you're done with classes, go and drink the night away. So those years were just so wild that I was able to, I want to say the word balance, but it was extremely unhealthy. All these nights blocking out, but still performing at such a high level at work. It's just a crazy time.
When you look back, obviously there's later and we'll get to it, do you realize was there awareness of it then, or then it's just like, hey, I'm making it happen. Like, this is fine.
I suppose like the number of friendships I started to ostracize, like you start to push people away because it's like when you have people close to you, it seems from afar that you're just like the fun party Kelsey and like, wow, she was really the life of the party. That was a blast. But those that had to like carry you home that night or clean up the, vomit because you threw up in the car or whatever it is, you end up really pushing away a lot of friends. And the stress on my family as well really got to me. I was hospitalized twice in college, and for having too much alcohol in my system. And those times, it's just the horror you put your parents through, worrying about you, each weekend kind of thinking like, God, what's going to happen to Kelsey this weekend? Those definitely weighed on me. And I felt a bit like, what is wrong with me? I just remember like, why can't I get this together? Because I'd say, oh my God, I'm so embarrassed. I'm mortified about what just happened. I'm never going to let this happen again. Like next weekend's going to be better. I'm going to have a water after every drink. Or then it was, I'm only going to have beer, or I only drink tequila. I only have wine. Like I tried every scenario because I was like, society makes you think you have to find a way to keep alcohol in your life. And so I was just definitely not at that time convinced that I'd need to stop, but I sure was confused, like why this was so freaking hard for me. And then, starts to affect romantic relationships. Like I had a boyfriend for 4 years, and, that was a really trying time. Like it was so hard to be hurting someone you cared about and saying you're going to be different, and then you just weren't. And I didn't realize until 2015 that like I have a disease, I really do have a disease. I am an alcoholic, and I won't be able to keep this in my life if I want to have a relationship with myself or anybody else.
Yeah. I mean, look, I think as we get into like that part, because then you graduate and you move back, right? So you move back to Sacramento. So you graduate, you're still performing, you're still at Intel, you're doing all this amazing work. So you go back to Folsom. Does that start to change at all? I guess, as you kind of go back home, obviously, being in college at ASU of all places is definitely a, mecca for what you described. But, how did you think about making that move back versus staying in Tempe or Chandler?
Yeah, I mean, I knew I wanted to come back. That boyfriend I mentioned was in the Sacramento area as well. So we both had, he worked for Intel too. So we were like kind of on a plan to get ourselves relocated to, another campus together. But Arizona wasn't going to be in my plan. And like I mentioned, ostracizing a lot of friendships. It was sort of like, lots of drinking buddies and not a lot of real relationships that I had to hold on to there. So I was okay with, geographically leaving. And the problems with alcohol, unfortunately, didn't just disappear. I think what changed is just the frequency of the blackouts. But my problem really was, and through all of my drinking, was like when I started to drink, I had a hard time stopping. It was like once I had one, I was going to have 8, and I would end up blacking out in most cases. So it was just never a like, let's just go have a drink, never kind of a casual thing. I always went to excess. So that continued. It just wasn't as frequent as when I was in college, where there's a party going on every night. It was like when we'd go out on the weekends, I just inevitably every weekend, every other weekend, sometimes every few weeks, like there'd be another episode where I had a really bad night. I was having to apologize for, pick up the pieces. Someone explained to me what I had done. That boyfriend most of the time, right? So, and I think this is just about a year after, at 21, I tried to get sober for 4 months, thinking like, well, I'll just do a reset. If I can sober up, I'll be able to handle it. Sober January,
right?
Yeah,
like you said, that's like the go-to.
Totally. So try that, didn't work. And then, still struggling until 2015. So after Sacramento, we were moved 2 years later, got moved up to Oregon, another move inside of Intel to work at the campus up there in a new group for the Internet of Things. And great opportunity, nice move and everything. But yet again, alcohol was still there. And this kind of led me to that final straw to say enough's enough.
What was that? So let's get into it. So obviously, again, you're continuing to move up at Intel. So you've got this, again, these like two different parts of your life here. What was it for you that finally was the like aha, like, all right, this is it. Like we'll figure out the moderation game. It's the like, hey, this needs to change. Because I experienced, my dad also, my dad was an alcoholic growing up, and but then when I was 7, he went to rehab and got sober and hasn't drank since. And so I've got this kind of interesting relationship with it, where at 7, you kind of like 5, 6, 7, like it's like fun, Dad. Like we're going to the bar playing video games, and we're like, like we're riding in the back of a pickup truck, like which at the time probably isn't the most safe thing.
Yeah.
And so I've got kind of an interesting, different kind of outside view on it. Like what for you was the catalyst? For him, I think it was us, like as kids, like our parents got divorced, and it's like, hey, like you got to get your shit together, or this isn't going to be a thing. So what for you was the catalyst?
Gosh, and in one way, it's like that foresight of like, that is going to be my future if I keep drinking, ending up with a divorce with kids, or getting a DUI with a child in the car, or, it was like, how far do I want to go became the question. But that final straw, I was on a business trip in Barcelona for Intel, and this was September of 2015, and business trips were always the worst for me, like it was like everybody has that mindset when they're on a business trip, for most people, where they're like, whoa, it's kind of like let loose and like let's party. And I'm like, yes, everyone's like ready to go, everyone's going to want to stay out and go out, drink and party, and we'll have some fun. And the tab's on Intel, so it's always like, you just always had some excuse where everybody's kind of letting loose. And for someone who abuses alcohol, it's like just primed for horrible things to go down. So this is in Barcelona. I arrived like 10:30 in the morning, a day early, to be able to settle in and stuff before the conference. Got a welcome bottle of wine in my room, and I'm like, well, whatever. I got a day of vacation. I'm in Spain. Cracked that open. went to the pool and met up with some other coworkers and whatnot. And, drink after drink started. And I remember very little until coming to at 3:30 in the morning. And I was in a stranger's apartment. I had cheated on my then boyfriend, lost my belongings, like where's my purse, where's my phone, the whole thing. And have no idea where I am in Barcelona. And I just got back to the hotel, start putting the pieces together. And I had the most clear morning I've ever had in my mind of I cannot keep doing this. This is it, enough's enough. And this is not the Kelsey I'm supposed to be. And so I called my Nana, actually, my grandma, and she's 21 years sober when she passed away. So she was my first call that morning to say, I'm ready. I got to get sober and I want to stop drinking. What do I do? And holy shit, and a lot of tears and all of that. And she said, well, you need to get your butt to an AA meeting. She has a Scottish accent. So I think she said your wee butt or something. And it's so sweet. Said, you need to find an AA meeting and let's do this thing. And so I found an English speaking AA meeting that morning in Barcelona, and I've never had a drink since. It'll be 7 years this September. So, everything falls apart. You're the world is literally ending. Relationship was over. I just felt I laid on the floor and having to move into my own apartment for the first time by myself when I get back from the trip and all this. And I called my dad, everything's falling apart. My world's ending. And he was like, you need to get up off the ground. You need to unbox one box and then the next one step at a time, and it's he's not even an AA person. He's basically dropping AA lingo on me one day at a time. Yeah. He was like, you just need to get up, just do it. One thing, this is it. And I literally look back at that moment. That was the beginning of my life. That was really the first step towards creating who Kelsey was going to be, and this chance to figure out what I loved and what were my hobbies and who was I really with alcohol out of the way.
Yeah, I think especially through the pandemic too. I mean, one, it's an awesome accomplishment. 7 years is, I know it's no easy feat, especially from where you came from. So, I think in the pandemic too, I think it's accelerated this for a lot of people, right? Because you're never around coworkers or anything, right? There's a lot of, I think we've seen a lot of it happen behind closed doors during this time. And so how did you, so again, you're at Intel, and you continue to, you stay at Intel for the next, 3 years or 2.5 years. Mm-hmm. And again, continue to kind of move up. So what was that transition like for you? So going from being this person who's out, she's doing all these things, to now being, sober Kelsey, right? And again, which comes with it, this connotation for people that which obviously means not fun or engaging or hanging out, right? It's that can only happen because of alcohol. What was that transition like for you? Into kind of being because you already were doing well professionally. Yeah. And what was that like?
Yeah. Then the professional side of it was funny. There were a few people at Intel who knew that I maybe overindulged in alcohol, and, but a lot that just brushed it off, right? They just saw the professional Kelsey and then saw that I was, having a good time, life of the party kind of. I'm an outgoing personality anyway. So me drunk with coworkers was usually or folks that worked at Intel. I won't even say tight team coworkers, but just people seeing me in a, work environment. It was kind of well, she's just having a good time. So when I, had to get real that I've got a problem and I've decided to get sober, because there's a luncheon we're going to go to, or we're having another team event or something, and I got to explain that I'm not, not drinking anymore. And I wanted to share that I, really wasn't going to be drinking. So I did with a few individual folks, and it was always this kind of oh, really? I had no idea. Had no idea you were struggling, because it was such a double life. But on the personal side with friends and whatnot, it was kind of a total restart, not only with the relationship ending. So it was sort of the who's going to get what friends, but also that it was, a whole new Kelsey that's not going to be going out to the bars and getting drinks. So lots of internal soul searching and time for me. I did, this is kind of what leads to dope, is getting back in the kitchen. I loved to bake as a kid, and having all this time on my hands, not hungover on a Saturday morning. I'm wide awake at 6 a.m., going to a yoga class and coming back, and just a big self-care period of my life to really take care of myself and figure out what I love. And I was baking, cooking, all sorts of stuff, just loving time in the kitchen. It's very peaceful for me. Like following a recipe is so meditative, you know, it's just like step by step, this is what your brain's focused on. And sort of like I mentioned about alcohol, that quiet for my mind that it gave me, I found in baking. You know, I really find it's just such a time can just fly by, and I have such a nice time doing it. So I was making cookies, truffles, cakes, everything. I was like bringing stuff into the office and giving it to coworkers, and ended up, you know, having enough requests of like, hey, could you make those for, you know, my kid's birthday or this or that? I started Monster Baby Bakery. I was nicknamed Monster Baby by my family for being such a messy eater. And so I started this little bakery to do like cakes and, you know, cookies and things for coworkers and friends. And that was kind of a really nice, like, I don't know, thing to pour yourself into, you know, especially with all this time, like I mentioned, you know, being able to like create a website, make business cards. And I had such a fun time doing it. And that was my first dabble into entrepreneurship. You know, I had no idea how to run a business, don't have any entrepreneurs in my family, as I mentioned. And just step by step, Google by Google, figure out like what to do to start a food business in Oregon. And got that off the ground. And it was a great test of things. But economics of making a cake for 6 hours and selling it for $60 do not add up in the long run. So something had to change.
And you were still working at Intel though, right?
Yes,
like you're working full-time at Intel, and then you moved to San Francisco, and you know, you're managing the hack harassment program, which is a pretty serious program. And, you know, are you still like, you know, kind of is like the baking idea starting to manifest? And then as you move to the Bay Area, it's kind of becoming more real. Did you stay into it until you started Dope?
Yeah, so I had Monster Baby when I was in Oregon up until I left. And when I moved to SF, I was like, you know, this hack harassment thing that you mentioned was with Lady Gaga's Born This Way Foundation, you know, fighting online harassment using machine learning and all this, which was kind of like in its newer stages. So it was very exciting to be a part of. And I thought, let me just, you know, kind of focus on that, pour myself into it. I'm going to be going through this move. I'll put the bakery on the side. But I kept baking for myself, you know, still I was working like maybe 50, 60 hours a week. So there's still plenty of personal time that I was baking for myself on the side from Intel, but not selling it. And something else I picked up, though, when I went to SF was an attempt at being a vegan. So I thought, well, I'm in the Bay. I'm not drinking.
It's very San Francisco.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. I was like, okay, no coffee. And then I'll try being vegan. And I was like, let me just see what I should remove from my life. I guess I was in sort of this exploration period. And I really sucked at being a vegan. I did pretty good with the meats and things, but could not let go of butter. And so my baking was with a great...
Especially as a baker, yeah.
Right. Oh, it's like literally, no. I mean, everything was just killed if you tried to sub it. And people say vegan butter is like just as good. You can use it in everything, but it ain't the same.
It's not the same. It's like me. Like I can never be so I'm allergic. I have celiac disease, right? So I'm allergic to wheat flour. So, you know, like, look, you know, we'll cook things with rice flour and tapioca. And I'm like, I know it's not as good. Like, I know that.
Yeah.
Now, there's some cookies, because the cookies are like this. Look, if you add enough butter and sugar to a lot of things, like it can be like a serviceable thing. But no, it's like I can imagine a baker not doing butter. It's like, again, if I was to go into baking, it's like people are like, oh, this is great. You know, it's like, not so much.
Yeah, it's tough to mix. So I did, however, have a great substitute for raw eggs, and I was using that in like waffles and brownies and like anything I was making. And so my cookie recipes were now like with butter, but this egg recipe substitute, because I never had eggs on hand. So I had that big entrepreneur like light bulb moment of like, holy shit, this cookie dough is safe to eat raw and you can bake it. You know, I was keeping a bowl of it in the fridge to snack on through the week, baking a few cookies when I wanted warm cookies. And I always, like many people, would sneak a few bites of regular cookie dough, but it was like,
of course,
you know, you have that hesitation and you're like, maybe I'll just have one, you know, or I'll just lick the spoon. I won't eat a whole thing. And with this, I was like, no, I could actually snack on it. Like that can be my dessert to have, you know, a couple spoonfuls of it, few bites and enjoy it and have cookies. So I was like, this would be fun. You know, I was kind of missing the Monster Baby Bakery, like entrepreneurship components. Like I had a little online store for it and the website and all that I mentioned. So kind of letting that go. I think I had that itch, you know, I'm like, what could be my next thing? And when I thought of this and stumbled on the recipe, it made me think that, you know, everyone loves cookie dough. Why do we like dig it out, like the little nuggets that are in cookie dough ice cream?
So good. My wife will complain, like, don't eat it. I'm like, I don't care. Like, I don't care that it's supposedly raw eggs. Like, I'm going to eat it.
Totally. Yeah. So that, and you've got like Ben and Jerry's #1 selling ice cream flavor forever is cookie dough ice cream. Like people love cookie dough. And, honestly too, like searching through Pinterest when I'm looking for fun recipes and things that I'd bake, I remember this sort of trend kind of starting of like, there seems to be a lot of cookie dough flavored things. Like, oh, here's a recipe for cookie dough cheesecake or cookie dough cupcakes or, and I was like, why not just eat the cookie dough? So set off. I had literally like a 4-hour R&D afternoon where I made a few flavors from the cookie recipe that I had been using for, maybe 6 months at the time. And sent it out with me and my friends to Ocean Beach and did a little taste test. I remember this like so clear. Like I had these little jars and I had packed the 4 flavors and we were going to have a little bonfire at Ocean Beach. And I was like, well, I'm going to bring this cookie dough, guys. I think I'm going to start a cookie dough company. And did a little taste test on the beach. And it was a hit. It. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course. They're like, no, this is like, I don't know. It's so like, good. I mean, I'm sure you can mess up cookie dough, but I feel like you'd have to, especially with your experience. So, all right. So you do that and then you're still working at Intel full time. When do you finally say, all right, I'm going to do this thing, right? Yeah. And I'm going to try to make this a thing.
So this was February of 2017. Kind of the idea comes, make the flavors, and have that first pass of people being like, no, this is delicious, like couldn't stop eating it. Like all of them are gone that day. So I'm like, I need to do this. Like, let's make it a thing. And at the same time, I had been planning my sabbatical and I was going to get 10 weeks off paid from Intel for 10 years of service. And that started April 20th. So if you know the start date of dope, April 20th, you know that I didn't go on this big trip I'd been planning. Yeah. I was, this big backpacking trip through Southeast Asia. And when I told
Sounds pretty awesome.
Oh yeah, it would have been so cool, but dope is way cooler. I'm glad I did what I did. But I remember my dad being like, I told him, I'm not going to go on the trip. I'm going to start a cookie dough company. And he was like, what? Like at first he'd been all nervous about the backpacking trip, but then when I told him I was going to quit my job, he's like, no, like what about Southeast Asia? It was going to be, you're going to do that.
Oh yeah. Now he's all pro it now. He's like, yeah, no, it sounds great.
Yeah, do it. So yeah, I think everyone thought I was having a quarter life crisis, It's like, hey, I'm getting sober, I'm moving to SF, I'm vegan. And then I'm like, I'm going to quit my job. Might as well have said I'm going to like go live in the African safari or something. And
right.
Saharan desert and join a tribe. I don't know. They just thought I was losing my mind going to start this business. And the idea that I might actually quit, right? So this timing with the sabbatical was just really, really fortunate. Again, another privilege to have 10 weeks to try a business. After 10 years of service, usually people want to take a break. And instead I'm like, nope, let me just start a company. But it was a great testing period. So 10 weeks to see if it would work or not. I spent those next few months, February to April, getting all things ready. Like what license would I need to start a business, get the website, make some t-shirts. I got a little food cart built for like $500 in Soma in San Francisco. And set out to Dolores Park on April 20th. This is a park in San Francisco with plenty of willing participants to try some cookie dough.
Exactly. I'm thinking like, well, you kind of rigged your test market in Dolores Park where everyone's just getting stoned and hanging out.
Yeah, they were looking for some snacks. So served the willing market there. And, hilariously, I'm like, edible cookie dough. And people are like, okay, I've never had edibles. Like, how much should I have? I'm like, no. Like, sugar highs only. It's just cookie dough, So we had lots of explanations. It still today continues, but we sold out in 3 hours. I had taken 100 pounds of cookie dough there, had a commercial kitchen in Oakland that I'd gotten to let me in to make this dough for the first day. And yeah, sold out. And the feedback was just amazing. And it kind of gave that validation of like, people love the recipe. They're willing to pay the price that I'm asking. And at the time, I think it was like $6.95 for 1 scoop, maybe $8.95 for 2 and $12.95 for 3 or something. And moved through it super quick. So it was, really validating that this idea could work. People really do love cookie dough. And then came the like, okay, now what? Like, what's the right place?
Exactly.
Where do you want to sell it? What do you want to do? And my answer for the first, I'd say 2 years was like, anywhere that would let me, I was like at a food park 7 days a week. We were doing corporate catering for offices and, birthday celebrations, like whatever it would be, all sorts of catering and pop-ups until in September of 2017, I got a call from Pier 39 that they had a space available on the pier, and they loved my concept and wanted to know if I would be interested in a storefront on the pier. So that was awesome.
That's cool.
That was the first big step into a real storefront. At the time we just had a kiosk that we opened in September that was on Market Street, and it was 10 by 10, but at least we had like a physical space. So that was a blast. The grand opening for that was on my 2-year sobriety anniversary. So I've had the stars align on my sober birthday. Something cool keeps happening.
I love it. And then what does that early expansion look like before Shark Tank?
Yeah, so this is, I went to film for Shark Tank September of 2018. So there's just about a year in the story till then. And really that was growing the Pier 39 store, starting to get kind of, you get the first handful of employees and things. I think it was about 2 months into the business that I got my very first employees part-time to help work events so that I could like keep booking events. You have that realization that like, you can't grow the business if you're the only one working in the business. Mm-hmm. So kind of baby steps from there and then growing that pier store. Our first summer on the pier was like 20,000 new customers a month at that store, which was just wild to have so many people coming through, and international too, people from all over the world getting to come and see. And then as we built an online presence with social, people wanting and like seeking out coming to Dope when they'd come to San Francisco, which was awesome. That was really, really cool. Getting messages from people that are like in the UK being like, we can't wait to come visit, we're coming next week. What flavors will you have? And yeah, it was a blast to have kind of this like physical representation of my little, my dream with Dope.
Yeah. And did you start out, because obviously, you use the platform and, Dope for Hope to talk about social stigmas around addiction, mental health. Did you always have this mindset of kind of intertwining the two, or, when does that start to come about as well too, where you really want to make, make this a part of the story too?
Totally. Like it's a very cool full circle moment of like Dope was created because of my sobriety, and now it exists to help other people around sobriety and mental health. So it's a fun concept that I was able to get these things together, and even the product itself, like having this little moment of self-care and like just treat yourself, have something sweet, indulge in it. And, we're not trying to make this dessert into a health food, just like it'll make you feel good and it's nostalgic. So we think it's really good for your mental health. But Dope for Hope was formed in September of 2017 was the first time that this kind of came to my mind. I mentioned that the 2-year sobriety anniversary was the grand opening of the kiosk. And for that event, the grand opening on Facebook, I had made a little event and I said, in celebration of the founder's 2-year sober birthday, if you come up and say it's dope to be sober at checkout, you'll get 20% off. And we started getting all of these messages from people that were like, I'm 13 years sober and I've never told anyone. It's really cool to see you sharing this. Someone else 2 weeks sober, and she was asking if I knew of any good meetings in the city. And I just had another light bulb moment of like, oh my God, like what a conversation this needs to be.
Yeah.
Look at this little beacon I put out that's like, raise your hand, right? Like I'm like, hey, I am, I'm sober and proud that I was like celebrating it. And to have that let other people, like a little lighthouse, let other people come and see that it was okay to talk about it. I'm like, hell yeah, we got to use this platform for some good. I mean, I think I had maybe 5,000 followers on Dope's Instagram at the time, but it felt like there's people who like could listen and that I could help. And so let's make Dope about more. And I knew I'd keep growing the company, so it's like, if this could be about more than just cookie dough, like how fulfilling for me and how many lives we could touch. So yeah, I started Dope for Hope, and our whole goal is to break the stigma around mental health and addiction recovery. We do a ton for inside the company. So for the employees and trying to help our employees bring their full selves to work. We're a designated recovery-friendly workplace, which is super fun. Exists in like 28 states now. A great program to help with like mental health policies and, really how you encourage a culture change to talk about the real stuff in life and not have that like employer-employee boundary that typically exists. And that includes a lot of vulnerability from my side to say when like I'm not doing okay or not taking care of myself like I need to, and here's what I'm working on, and very open conversation with my staff so they know I'm a human too and that I'm okay with them being humans. And then for our community, so like very authentic, open conversation with the community. We do mental health Mondays, little dose of hope, or mental health resources shared through social and in emails. And then the last part is donations. I think at Intel, I learned a lot of this about,
Right.
How much a company could do to give back. Like Intel sent me for 2 weeks to the Philippines on a education service corps trip that they do to send employees out to go and help. We were bringing technology to a school that had been devastated by a typhoon. And like, you just see this mass amount of money being given from a company who's surely making plenty, right? But they aren't keeping it all for themselves. It was like, what could we do to help the world? So yeah, I thought, how could I incorporate some of that with the money that Dope could generate to help give back to nonprofits that are already making such an impact in the space? I don't need to recreate the wheel. I think I saw a lot of that when I was with Hack Harassment. We were working with different nonprofits and seeing like, oh my God, wait, you guys need to know so-and-so. Like, you guys are doing the same things. Like, you should know this group and that group. There's just so much repetition. And I've found some amazing partners in the nonprofit space, and we've donated more than $60,000 to date to help this issue. So the She Recovers Foundation is our beneficiary for Dope for Hope today, and they're amazing. It's for women who are in or seeking recovery.
Well, we will link to all of that
Yeah.
as well. And I want to hear, I know we've got to wrap up here in 10 minutes or so, but I want to hear, you're doing all these amazing things. You're growing this business that you're passionate about. You're now, able to bring kind of all these things together, and then Shark Tank happens, right? This is 2019. What happened then? As you're on the show, we'll link to the show as well too, so people can check it out in your segment. What was life after, right? So you've got this business, it's growing. You're doing some amazing things in the community, in broader online community. And then again, this airs, like you said, you shot it earlier, but it airs in I think May.
Yeah.
What was that like after?
Yes, it was such a wild journey. Honestly, from May 2019 to today has been like, you'd think it's an entirely different business that I'm running now than I was running then. Sales wise, we did $150,000 in 2017 and then just shy of $1 million in 2018. In 2019, we did 1.2 million. And that is the year that Shark Tank airs. We were very light on e-commerce in 19. It was like we had a site, but it wasn't really a big focus, maybe doing 30 orders a month or so. And when Shark Tank aired, since I didn't talk about e-commerce so much on the show. So we actually got maybe like 400 orders a week for the first couple weeks after it aired, but it wasn't like a massive thing. Shark Tank these days is very much like, there's no more everyone sits around the TV and watches primetime. Like, people just watch shows on their Hulu, when they want to catch up on stuff. Yeah. So it sort of like trickled through, and certainly like, a nice boosted sessions. I think we had like 50,000 people come to our site when it aired. So fun to see like this blast of people checking out if we were still around. And I was on there raising money for the store in Vegas, which we had just opened in March of 19. So now had this like flagship store on the Strip in Vegas that was beautiful. I loved it. We ended up closing our San Francisco store in 2019, though, about August of 19. Cost of doing business in SF was just getting out of control. And our Vegas store was just beautiful and perfectly fine. And like, let's just focus our efforts there and start up another business channel to get hyper focused, right? So like, let's start rolling into e-commerce a little heavier and not have this like, okay, we do catering and we do a little wholesale and we're a little bit in e-commerce, and we kind of, it was like we were dabbling in way too many things. So got really focused. We kept saying 2020 is going to be the year of focus. And in November of 19, we launched our Shopify site, so a new version of our website, and started ads on Facebook. And we went from $50,000 of online sales in 19 to 2.5 million online in 2020. Just a huge shift in the business. Closed our San Francisco storefront in October of 2020, with the pandemic decimating tourism. That wasn't going to fly, and moved into having this rather large online business where our mission could even come across even cleaner, and even more of a relationship with customers. Like now we have 160,000 person email list, how amazing to get to share what we want to share with people in such a direct way. And same thing on social media. It's just awesome to have this connection instead of, oh yeah, we went into a scoop shop on vacation and left. It's like, this is really building a community now. So our next big step is getting into retail. We have some major launches in the next few months here. We're launching at Walmart and Costco. So you guys you heard it here first.
Congratulations. I love it.
I love it. Yeah, it's a fun thing, but big change, so much since Shark Tank. We were 800,000 in lifetime sales, and now we're at 9.4 million in lifetime sales. So the Sharks missed out.
I'm sure. For sure they did. Let me ask you this. What's next, right? So you're doing all these cool things. You've got, again, you talk about going into retail. So as we kind of wrap up here, what's next for you? What are some things that you're really excited about, whether it's, with the Dope for Hope program, whether it's with the business, just you personally, what are the things that you're excited about in, 2022 and beyond?
Yeah, well, entrepreneurship is like getting an MBA every 6 months and something else, So I feel like I'm just diving into a whole new world with retail, particularly for the side that I really focus on with the sales and marketing components of it. It's a whole new world to figure out how best to market that you're in a new grocery store and what that's going to be like to get customers in there and help make sure the velocity is good and where we need it to be is great, really. And so it's been fun. That's a really exciting part. Getting to see this launch at Costco and Walmart in particular are going to be really big moments in my life to walk into a Costco and see this 2-pound bag.
Every Costco, all Walmarts, it's going to be everywhere.
So we're going to be in Costco through all of Texas. It's the Texas region. So there's 41 warehouses. It includes Oklahoma and Louisiana. There's a couple out there as well. But yeah, anywhere you are in Texas, if there's a Costco, we're there. And then for Walmart, it's 200 stores through California and Nevada for the start here. So yeah, it's going to be a blast. We're in the Walmart that's in my dad's city, Placerville, California. So
that's awesome.
I'm joking. I'm
Dad,
we
have to be in that one. We have to of all the we have to be in that one.
You need to go by every day at lunch and clear the shelves out. We need to move the product. So they're going to be wow, this one store in Placerville is just doing amazingly well.
It's one guy buying it every day.
Yeah. So I think that's fun. And, there's new ways with the retail side to think about how Dope for Hope comes to life. And I'm really focused on trying to find the right retail partner who wants to do something like a donation matching campaign for Recovery Month in September or Mental Health Awareness Month in May. And see, that's some big voices if you can get a company like, say, Albertsons or Walmart or someone like that to partner with you on something. It's a big mover, right? There's not a lot of talk out there still about addiction recovery from a big corporate stance. It's still this sort of shrouded topic. So I'm hoping to break that. And I think, retail is a great place to do it.
I love that. Well, look, your story has been awesome. It has been just amazing just to hear and learn, your journey. And again, as we do on this show, talking about people's experiences, and again, as people see where you are now and just the ability to follow your passion, to continue to right your ship and go through all these brave moments, to completely change your life, to align toward what your passion is and to be successful at the same time doing it. That if you're out there, we'll link to a lot of the sites that Kelsey mentioned as well too. So I'm sure a lot of you listening may be experiencing some of this as well too, that, again, through the pandemic and, my background as a sales leader and, CEO now, but, especially in sales, if you're not out drinking or staying out till midnight, you're just not a part of the crew. Yeah. And there's a lot of people that, their lives have been, they're forced to kind of live these dual lives. And so what I hope is that for a lot of my audience that listens, that is in the business world, in sales or marketing, where I think that this is just as, it's prevalent in a lot, but I really hope that you can listen to this. And if you feel like this resonates, you can check out some of the things that Kelsey's doing and the links that we'll put there to take that first step. And so I think, you sharing this story with a lot of our audience and your success and, doing the things that you love, I think is going to touch a lot of people. So I really, really enjoyed the conversation and you sharing here.
Thank you. I hope so. And I think it's I hope if nothing else, it's a call to take some inventory, if you're listening, just stop and take 5 minutes. Think about what's adding value to your life these days and what's not, what's draining you, what could you remove? And it's never too late to change your habits, change your ways, change your life.
That's right. And you never know where that'll be 2 years later. You could be running a multi-million-dollar cookie dough empire.
You just never know.
So Kelsey, again, big thank you for joining me. And thank you everyone for tuning in. And we will see you next week on the Jake Dunlap Show.
Have a dope day.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in to another extremely fun and interesting episode. I thought it was fun and interesting, so I hope you did too, of the Jake Dunlap Show. Really great, just breaking down everything that makes people who they are, the success, the trials and errors, and I hope that you enjoyed it as much as I did. Make sure to subscribe on your favorite platform, and make sure, more than anything, to go over to jakedunlap.com. That's where you're going to stay up to date on all the latest guests, additional details, prep notes. We're going to be sharing everything on jakedunlap.com. So go ahead, go over there. You can subscribe there as well too, and we will see you next week on the Jake Dunlap Show.